G'day, legends. Welcome back to Roadside, presented by Zwift. Today, we will be discussing the disappointing news that the Herald Sun Tour will not be returning in 2026. The news just dropped on Friday, and it's gone. This race, likely forever. It's almost been resurrected a number of times, Tommy, but this does look like the final nail in the coffin for the Herald Sun Tour.
Wow, likely forever, mate. I hope you're wrong. I hope you're wrong on that front. But, mate, you've been across this one for quite a while. We've seen sort of the happenings of the race. They've announced it, but you've been across this one, mate. Can you give us just a little bit of insight before we get into it a little bit further?
Yeah, I mean, I honestly, this has been it's the race. Even though we got the big announcement this year with Grace Brown and Scooter on the bay, holding the old trophy, and the big media package that
Every
launched
member of Parliament within the vicinity of the region, they were there. We're on both sides of the house.
all of that.
Even the independents, mate, they were down there.
Yeah. We got all of that, and a lot of people you wouldn't know, but it was so close to coming back. Not just obviously stated for 2026, but in 23 and in 24, this race was 90% ready to be launched, like we saw this year. So it hasn't just been sort of one 12-month package really trying to drive it. It's been for the last 3 or 4 years of the team behind the Herald Sun Tour and the committee trying to put this together, and big time. Before we really get stuck into this, and we know why the race hasn't gone ahead, we'll share that in after the first sort of break. But we have to say, firstly, the team who have been driving it, Ag Gerimondo, the chairman of the Herald Sun Tour, and the committee behind it, they've been driving this, and they're absolutely gutted that they couldn't get this race over the line and had to pull the pin really so late in the season after the announcement was in like April, something like that this year. So they're gutted, but we've got to say thanks to those the team and Ag for just trying to get this big beast resurrected after its death in COVID, Tommy.
Yeah, no, they've done a good job, Harry, to try and pick it up. Like COVID, I thought, that's it, never coming back again. And I hope I'm still wrong on that front. But the team Ag and Ag's he's been around the block a fair few times, hasn't he? So yeah, it's a bit of a shame. And hey, who knows, mate? Never say never. You never know.
That's right, and you think about it. Ag, the chairman of the Herald Sun Tour committee. I mean, he's a big man in the news world. Worked for News Corp for a long time, so that's really a connection or a person that's connected to everyone and everything you need to be to try and put a race like this together with regards to sponsors and stakeholders. But it just goes to show how hard it is to resurrect a race, let alone start a new one in Victoria or even Australia, worldwide. But we're going to dive into this a bit more. But first, we must throw to our sponsor, Zwift. We love Zwift. Zwift Unlocked is the big thing that's happening at the moment on Zwift. So you can get the double XP. There's new routes. There's 5 new routes, I believe. There's unlocks. And of course, there are some new kilometers being added to Zwift on October 27th as well. So if you're not already on it, get yourself summer fit like you, Tommy, and get yourself up and about on Zwift for the summer. But let's get into it. This is Roadside, presented by Zwift. So, Tommy, just to provide a bit of context on the Herald Sun Tour, because not every one would really be across it. If you started watching cycling in 23, 24, you missed what the Herald Sun was all about. And I'll give you guys a little bit of a background here. The Herald Sun Tour, once upon a time, it was the cornerstone of Australian cycling for over 70 years. It began just as a Victorian state road race back in the 1950s, 1952, in fact. And, it was a chance for all of the local riders to showcase their talent and also showcase the local country towns across the state of Victoria. And over time, this race, it just grew and it grew, became bigger and bigger to become Australia's oldest and most prestigious stage race. We had the big stars like Richie Port, Simon Yates. We had Chris Froome, Simon Gerrans. We had, of course, the OGs racing around as well. It drew all the big international stars. It became a UCI 2.1 as well. And all of those winners I mentioned, Port, Yates, Froome, Gerrans, Henley, they all lifted the winner's trophy, and that just showed how prestigious this event was. And it raced up some epic climbs in Victoria. Now,
good roads.
we're Western Australians, but we've ridden a lot and raced a lot across the east coast of Australia. It had some iconic finishes, Tommy?
No, it certainly did, mate. It was an iconic race, and in Victoria, you sort of at the tail end of summer of cycling, and it was just in this beautiful sweet spot of, you've seen maybe the pinnacle of with the Tour Down Under, but to see all the Conti teams race Arthur's Seat and to see them sort of race Great Ocean Road, mate, like it was pretty cool. It was pretty iconic. And hopefully we're going to see that again.
Yeah, just all of those iconic climbs. If you've done the Peaks Challenge or 3 Peaks, over in the high country, you would have tasted many of the climbs that Froome or Hindley or some of the great women as well have raced when the Herald Sun was in its heyday. And from the historic context, like all the old legends of Australian cyclists, like John Trevorrow, guys like that. These guys like built their reputation and their notoriety in Australian cycling from the Sun Tour. You hear about those guys, and it reminds me of when I do the Legends dinner at the Melbourne Warrnambool race.
Cashy operation, eh?
Well, yeah, big cashy. You get these old legends that won the Warnie back in the 70s, and all they can talk about is how I placed 3rd in the Sun Tour here. I was behind Matt White. Sun Tour stage 3 here. Scooter McGrory came off the track and he rolled me here. Those are stories that are behind, the greats of Australian cycling, particularly on the Victorian front. So that is how big the Herald Sun Tour was. It was iconic and a massive staple in the Aussie calendar before. TDU was just a small sprinters race before Herald Sun Tour started to fade. But COVID was really, it took the wind out of its sails, and it started to lose stages as COVID was coming. And in the end, it could never come back after that, after that big pandemic.
Yeah, I guess it's a case in point of, COVID, there was just some withdrawal of funding, wasn't there, initially? That big pullback. It happened, and it's hard to get those organisations back on board, particularly if they were title sponsors. So, yeah, it ruined a lot of racing, didn't it, COVID? It changed our whole calendar, for starters, in Europe. And it hit races like Sun Tour the hardest, the ones on the margins.
It did. So the news was announced on Friday that officially the race would not be coming back in 2026. And you just found an article a couple of weeks ago from Cycling News dropping the race calendar and the dates.
A week ago. So to clarify as well, like the UCI, they've gone through and they've this time of year they actually announced, sort of the preliminary year or what's going to be happening next year with the racing, And on some of the threads that I was looking at, the Sun Tour was listed. So a lot of people have gone, okay, cool, Sun Tour's back on the menu, like sweet, we'll get the details in the next month or so. It'll probably play third fiddle to sort of TDU Cadell's. And then all of a sudden, mate, I think that literally the Herald Sun just slapped a tiniest little piece of paper that they could carve out, and they just put in about 100 words saying it's not happening, not going ahead. Yeah. So there was no press release. There was no song and dance about it. They wanted to just slide this out to oblivion, didn't they? And if it wasn't for Escape, who picked it up straight away, then, yeah, mate, the news, we would have been waiting for the news to be announced, that with the dates and the stages and everything. We would have gone wanting for questions. You would have gone wanting for the cashies for the job, but for the race. But it was one of those ones where it just slid under the radar, didn't it?
It did. The article that was posted on the Herald Sun newspaper on Friday was tiny. It's something that you'd see in the class fields, or classified someone selling a lawnmower. And it read, by the way, I'll read it out. No Herald Sun Tour to be staged in 2026. The Herald Sun Tour will now not be held in 2026. A challenged environment for sponsorship and business has made it unviable to stage the tour and deliver it to the elite world-class standard required. The tour was last staged in 2020 before COVID stopped many sporting activities. We'd like to thank Visit Victoria, City of Ballarat, and Jayco for providing the support to revive the event. Now, when the Herald Sun Tour was being created or trying to get its legs again, it already had a number of things that were going to get in its way. And the first thing was scheduling. And scheduling in the Aussie summer is so tight. The only available slot in the summer calendar that made sense is the first week of February after the Cadel Evans Gradation Road Race. But it's tight because there's limited room in January due to Nationals and Tour Down Under, and the race couldn't finish too far away from Cadell's either, Tommy, because you have to entice the pros that are here for TDU and the Aussies here from Nationals, entice them to hang around so that they will complete these races. Because if they found a slot in March, that's too late. There's 3 weeks after Cadell's. The pros need to go back to Europe and they need to get going the rest of their season. And the ideal date for Herald Sun Tour originally was between Tour Down Under and Cadell's, that 26th of January through to the 1st of Feb. That is the honey hole for this race, really. They can go straight from TDU to Herald Sun Tour if they're selected, and then on to Cadell's. Then they go back to Europe. But
it's interesting. It's interesting you say that because then if you did do that, then a lot of the World Tour teams would say, okay, yep, no worries, we've got to hang around for Cadell's. So we'll race Sun Tour, but that would actually squeeze out quite a lot of the opportunities for the continental teams and for the Pro Series teams. So
not all of the World Tour teams would have raced Herald Sun Tour. It would have been a great opportunity.
They got to stay for Cadell's.
Yeah, I know that, but not every. They would have had slots for Pro Tour teams, which is the new which is the old continental team. So there would have been slots. It wasn't just going to be a World Tour race. It was going to be very much there to showcase domestic teams as well that we have. But the reason why it couldn't slot into that date between TDU and Cadell's is because of the Australian Open, the tennis. The tennis is actually one of the biggest hurdles that got in front of the Herald Sun Tour before they even were trying to get it up onto the calendar. They ended up settling on the first weekend after Cadel Evans Gradation Road sort of weekend with their races they've got now in that suite, and it was going to be 4 stages. And the deal was originally for a 2-year plan from Visit Victoria, the Victoria government, who were assisting with funding. So they had a 2-year plan, start with 4 stages in Ballarat, filling the void of course, Nationals, where it left its 17-year run there in 2023 or 24, sorry, and then build to 5 stages. That was the goal from the Herald Sun Tour team committee. And I spoke with the chairman last night, Ag. He's a friend of mine from way back since the Wollongong games, really. I first met him and we did a bit of work together. And he told me last night he was gutted, and the sole reason why the race couldn't go ahead, they couldn't get it up, is they just didn't get the major sponsors. They could not get them, and it was getting very late to the year. People go on holidays and everything shuts down, December through to January. So if you don't have your major sponsors locked in now, it ain't happening. And that's the cut and dry of it. They did not get the sponsors. The commercial interest was not there, or at least for the parties they were trying to get a hold of. And it's just terribly sad.
Yeah, it always comes down to money, doesn't it? It ultimately does. And like you talked on, mate, the calendar for sport is so busy. There is only so much money out there where the same companies want to get the coverage. And ultimately the tennis, which is a massive draw card, there just wasn't enough room. And also, you look at it from a media fallout perspective as well. It's not really going to hit mainstream news post TDU, is it? So with the tennis on, it just edged. It was just edged out, wasn't it?
The Australian Open is one of the biggest sporting events. I think it's the biggest one in Australia. Wide.
You're throwing the Ashes this year as well.
It's Victoria's one of Victoria's biggest events, and if you've got something on that's on the same time as the tennis, it's just not even going to make the first 15 minutes of the sports on the 6 p.m. news.
But mate, obviously, they tried to get up the Sun Tour last year before. Did you think this was inevitable, that it was going to fall over? Or, I don't know, like even you sort of talked about, there was only so much money that goes around, but is there the possibility to have done it a different way, or, source money from somewhere else?
Well, finding sponsors for Australian races, we know is so difficult, but it can be done. It can be. You've seen the Tour Down Under. It can be done. But, I don't know. I don't know if they could have looked. They would have been looking under every rock and cranny they had. They're very connected, got people that are well inside the news world who have sources everywhere. But I kind of look to the Pro Velo Super League in a way, and I look at Jerry Ryan. I think about, hey, Jerry, what would be more beneficial for Australian cycling? Is it money spent on Pro Velo Super League, or is it money spent on, say, the Herald Sun Tour? They both have a similar, they're both trying to do the same thing, foster our domestic and Australian racing, but sort of on two ends of the scale. And, Jerry seems to be the only person in Australia that can actually fund something like this, and I know that,
Or wants to.
Hey, look, even if there was just 10, 20 grand that could have been maybe split from some of the money in Pro Velo and maybe to give into Herald Sun Tour, but they probably needed more like 50 to 100,000. Maybe that could have helped, but it's just like cycling it's a tough sport to really know what your return on investment is going to be. It is tough.
Yeah, bloody tough. Interesting you touch on the Pro Velo, to be honest, mate. I'd love, the cost for running that in comparison to, what you're getting out of it, and in comparison to if you backed something like the Sun Tour, is that's a fascinating one, isn't it? You think there was more value for an Australian domestic scene in putting money into Sun Tour?
Well, I don't know. It's just an interesting question to ask. Like, the Herald Sun Tour is a great pathway. It's going to discuss in a moment some of the reaction from the general community and riders, and that's what it means for Australian cycling. We'll get into that. But, you think about the Sun Tour could be that sort of leverage for our Pro Tour and domestic Australian teams who race the Pro Velo, that they can aspire to go, hey, the Herald Sun Tour is our carrot. That's what we're working towards for the year. That's our sponsor's big marquee race. That's where we'll get our name against the big riders. You get the photos of your team riding next to some of the World Tour teams or just some of the big names in the sport. And that really can be the thing that keeps domestic teams alive. And a lot of teams folded after Herald Sun Tour collapsed, back in 2020. So that's one end of the scale, but on the other end, Pro Velo is obviously looking for those youngsters, the under-21s, to try and bring one or two of those riders to the World Tour. But that only really helps one or two riders, doesn't it? But it also, I suppose, gives a bit of a platform for racing across the summer. So it's just a discussion point. I'm not really sure either way, but we're going to hear about our reactions and, of course, the internet's, everyone, you, people listening, your reactions to this from what we saw online, and maybe discuss, Tommy, what it means for the Aussie summer and the calendar that we've got currently. I mean, this doesn't just impact, of course, us as fans. We would have loved to have seen another race just slot into for our already amazing Aussie summer of cycling, but the riders, like we just touched on before, it impacts our local pros and our development teams and those riders who are looking to come up. And I had a few riders message me a similar thing last night when we put a post up on our Instagram at Roadside Cycling Podcast. This race being removes another carrot for those young domestic Aussie riders and Pro Tour teams. It means they can't race many, or if any, UCI races at home in Australia unless they're already on a World Tour team or a Pro Tour team. And outside of nationals, and of course maybe the fragile Pro Velo Super League, there's not too many chances to prove yourself at a high level in Australia, and that is a sentiment that's echoed amongst many of the sort of top aspiring young riders in Australia who are just trying to prove themselves here before they go over to Europe, because we know how big that jump is.
Yeah, the jump's so big, isn't it? And I dare say 10 years ago, even 8 years ago, when Sun Tour was going around, it just provided this beautiful stepping stone of going, for a lot of the organisations in Australia who were trying to get a race team together, there was continental teams. And it really set a goal for those organisations to go, hold up, we want to become a Conti team because we want to race Sun Tour. And then you sort of had this flow-on effect of those organisations would step it up a level. They'd become better. So then if they had racing here in Australia, they were UCI, they would try and get the infrastructure to go race in Asia, and they'd also try and do some European stuff if they can. They could. And they just wouldn't do it individually. It wasn't like back in the day where, you pack your bags, you give mum and dad a kiss on the cheek and say, right, I'll see you in 4 months. hopefully I'm not coming back and, with a broken collarbone or, come home with a contract or something like that. So it just provided that infrastructure, and that really benefited the grassroots. So I'm of the opinion that this is a massive loss for Australian cycling. The Sun Tour, I thought, was vital importance. We've seen the guys who get the wild cards to go race Tour Down Under and Cadell's. Having the Sun Tour is just another massive filler for them to go and race at a high level, but also for the rest of the year to build for all those national teams to go try and get towards.
It would be amazing. Do you remember, I don't know whether it was when during COVID we just had the Santos Cycling Festival, and the top two, was it the top two the top two sort of NRS teams, the national teams here in Australia, they would get selected to ride the Santos Cycling Festival when it wasn't a UCI race. And I think in most 2.1 races or some UCI races around the world, the home nation can actually have their national team ride. That's how we see the Australian team, usually sponsored by Core Menthol or some sponsor in the men's and women's race. We see our young track riders race. We and get a little hack team put together. Wouldn't it be cool if we could have the top two NRS teams just slot into the Tour Down Under, even just one stage? Or
it'd be amazing. It certainly would be. It's just it just doesn't happen though, does it? Because even to get onto that national team, you've got to be on the selection potential squad. So then you've got to be, to race a World Tour race, you've got to be on whereabouts, which is the anti-doping program for at least, I think, a quarter of a year. Yeah. So a lot of the guys, if you're going to nationals here in Perth and you think, all right, I'm going to obviously go get a result if I can, and you have your summer's good enough, and then they come knocking on your door, you've got to be on that whereabouts program for a certain period of time. It happened to Michael Freeberg a couple of years ago where he won nationals down under. So that was a great shame. But to have another national team, or to have, I think just a broader selection of trying to include that would be great. But also, obviously, the World Tour guys kind of go, oh, no, man, this is the top end of the sport, mate. You got to earn your seat at the table, don't you?
Yeah. The Tour Down Under is also almost too big to be to even used in that world. It just makes me think as the Herald Sun.
That's why the Sun Tour was so good. Sun Tour 6 years ago, you had 4 or 5 Australian continental teams, and that was the point. That was it.
So we've lost Herald Sun Tour as well. Bay Crits as well sort of got squeezed out because of scheduling, really. The last one was on bloody New Year's Eve. I still remember that back in 2021. So there's only so much room on this calendar. But we are very interested to hear about what you guys think as well. Please give us a message here on our YouTube comments, Spotify comments, or on our post on Instagram. Let us know what you guys think. What does it mean to you as riders? Did you just and also fans, of course, we just want to watch this race as well on TV or support on the roadside. Another great reason to ride out there in the great Victorian areas and Ballarat, some of the nationals, recon courses. We know the Buninyong circuit would have been used in the Herald Sun Tour for 26.
Oh, really?
No doubt. But Tommy, what does this mean for the Aussie racing calendar? Because when I think about that, we've already got a great calendar already. It is amazing. We've got Tour Down Under. I mean, that is just an amazing setup. We know.
At a professional level.
I feel like our calendar from a professional standpoint was just one race away from being a serious block for the visiting Euro professionals. It is already amazing. And we know that the Euros over there love to come to Australia for their start of the season. They fight to get there, particularly the way the races run, being all out of the centre of Adelaide. And we know Cadell's is great, but I feel like the Herald Sun Tour would have just slotted in so nicely and made it a nice block of Australian racing for that European Pello to not just become, Tour Down Under's there and then I will stay a week and do Cadell's. This would have been, okay, I'm just going to actually start training a little earlier just so I'm okay for those first 7 weeks in Australia. It just would have locked us in as a formidable beast, not just Tour Down Under.
Yeah, potentially. It is a curious one, even the calendar as it stands. So my understanding is that you're allowed to skip one World Tour race. And this year, for example, multiple World Tour teams, they skipped Cadell's. They didn't want to do it
They
because,
should have skipped Guangxi, mate.
well, there's more points over there. Also, it's at the tail end of the race, tail end of the season. So you think, oh, we'll punch our ticket, maybe not draw the short straw.
There's no way there's more points. There is not more points.
A week long of UCI racing in comparison to one day race.
It's not. It's not. You should see the points available for those one-day races at Cadell's, mate. They're like,
you know what? I think it would be the sheer desperation and need of those points changes severely when you get to the tail end of the season. But it's a fascinating one, isn't it? So, some teams, I think even Decathlon or whatever, they skipped that section there. So I don't know, mate. I can't agree with you in totality, because I think there were a lot of teams and a lot of riders, they get to the end of Cadell's and they're like, no, mate, I'm ready to go home. I've been down here since early January. I've been going for a month. I am ready to go home. And that's why you wouldn't get a lot of the World Tour teams to stay around for
what do you think,
Sun Tour.
What do you think about this? What does it mean, man? What does it mean for this calendar?
Well, I think ultimately, mate, the bridge for the amateur levels, the bridge between pro and amateur is just getting wider. And we're going back to those dark ages, mate, where it is pack your bags, go to Belgium, have a crack individually, try and, lean on connections. If you've got them at club level over there in Belgium, go race Kermesses, get a win, get noticed, get on a contract, you get a Conti contract. Next year, had a couple of mates who have done exactly that. So people are still doing that. That's still a process, a system to try and make it. But ultimately, having the infrastructure with the team, because teams wanted to race, people wanted to race the Sun Tour. It helped provide that stepping stone. So I think that gap between, being able to be a local amateur, race at a high level here in Australia, and even in New Zealand, mate, they have the New Zealand Classic, Tour of Southlands. So as well, those races in that calendar is so important. So that race in New Zealand, that's been one that I like guys like Benny O'Connor. It's pivotal to him to sort of add to his palmares to present to a European team. Like Jai winning at Sun Tour, mate, that meant a lot. That was a huge victory for him. So, and then he went off and was signed with DSM.
Yeah. No, you're right. It's a good point, a very good point. So let us know what you guys think as well. Herald Sun Tour, we're disappointed that it's not going ahead. But our summer in Australia is still an amazing thing to look forward to. We've got nationals kicking off soon, not soon, but in a few months now, Tommy. And for us here in WA, we're very happy that it is here in Western Australia for our amazing course. Riders already hitting Kings Park, doing the laps. I mean, the sun's out there. It's still light now, 5 p.m. It's amazing out there. So everyone on the East Coast, just be sure everyone is training very hard. And if you think it's going to be in Perth for just 3 years, you are very, very mistaken. It will be continued. And I wouldn't be surprised if there's a big announcement at the end of the road race in 26 to extend it. But we've got a lot to come, don't we, Tommy? We've got a lot to come.
Yeah, we certainly do, mate. First, we got one of the best races on the calendar in a couple of weeks. Tour of Margaret River, mate. The last one over here in our great state of WA. So,
some of the alumni,
lots on the menu this year.
Who are some of the alumni at the Tour of Margaret River?
Oh, mate. Clarkey, I think he's been there. Durbridge, he rolls down. Jess Allen. There's a lot of people who've done it.
Simon Clark, Sam Welsford, Jai Hindley, Michael Storer, Jens Voigt, Matthew Keenan, Robbie McEwen, Annemiek van Vleuten, Paulina Ruyackers, a teammate of mine, taught her everything she knows. Mariana Voss has also been here on a few occasions, and that's just naming a few. So Tour of Margaret River has led some big beasts to some big names, and it's going to be this 25th year. We look forward to that. Mate. But Tommy, we'll wrap it up. We'll have our next show. Of course, we're fortnightly, every sort of Tuesday or Wednesday. So we'll have an episode coming in about 7 days or so. But what's going to be on for you, mate, for the rest of this weekend, being a Saturday night?
Oh, mate, get my head to work, just have a quiet Saturday night. You know me, I don't like to tempt the waters too much on a Saturday night. So we're gonna
You're
keep
recording
it.
from the pub. He's got his
I've just
hand
come back
wrapped
from the pub
around.
and then I'm about to go. No, look, no, mate, no, get out on the bike tomorrow. Maybe see if there's a few tea times available tomorrow afternoon, mate. What about you? You're about to go lop some
Uh,
trees.
yeah, just going to help some friend of mine with some gardening, and I'll be on the Zwift bike tomorrow. Was going to race, but it's going to be
Oh,
raining tomorrow,
bloke.
so
What friend of yours, mate? You're going to probably hit him with an invoice after you've helped him out.
there might be an exchange for sure. There'll be an exchange, but tell me it was good. Sad news, but we thought we'd give everyone a bit of a
Very,
heads up.
yeah.
Yeah, Tom and I will see you in a
Anybody
few.
also, if anybody
Yeah,
has a good memory of the Sun Tour, I want to hear it. Send him in. Voice message in into the pod. We'll play him on the next one.
we love it. All right, guys, take care.